Hello, hello, hello. My name is Jacob Edens, and I am your host today for this Inner Conquest video, the world's greatest modern metaphysics channel. Thank you for tuning in. So, what we're going to be discussing today is the conquest of your inner space. So, when you think about doing things, right? Many times when you have a goal or an objective, you want to think from the end as if it's done already, right? So what happens when you go to that process? Well, the reason that you want something is because you've been living as a version that doesn't have it or is, in lack, etc., right? So when you make a mental shift to essentially become the version that has that, you have to go through a process of identifying with that thing. And what happens is that when you cultivate a desire to be something new, or you want to change a circumstance, right? So say you want to change your body, you want to change your finances, you want to change any of these different situations, the thing that caused you to want that thing is normally it's a emotional state that you don't like anymore, caused or perceived as caused by something external that's not the way you want it, i.e. a bank balance, i.e. somebody not doing something, etc., right? So when you use metaphysics, which are hidden physics, which you could call is fourth dimensional thinking, which is understanding thoughts to things, which is understanding manifestation, which is understanding unseen to seen correlations, and then consciously manipulating those unseen causes to reflect in the external world, what you're doing is you're essentially placing your locus of power back inside of yourself, right? So if you have something that's not going the way you want it to, you want to understand that everything's reflecting externally from an internal, what we would call state of consciousness, right? So when you have an internal state of consciousness that you don't like, how do you get rid of that? Because if you keep engaging with things, right, your core being is essentially designed to do two things. That's to think and to focus. What you think you become and what you focus on, you create. So a common trap when trying to reorchestrate or inner engineer yourself to be a new version is your focus is distracted by a current circumstance, right? It's distracted by how bad something looks externally, or people, places, or circumstances showing up in alignment with what we would call a non-fulfillment reality, something that's not the way that you want it. So how do you shift completely into a fulfillment reality when there is non-fulfillment exclusively in your experience, right? Well, the way is you have to outthink your circumstance. You have to think as if it's already done and then stay persistent in the identity of the version of yourself that has already achieved that thing. But there's a couple of caveats, right? You can't really rely on external reality to validate you because you're new. You're being a new thing. It's like if you've been overweight your entire life and you're like, man, I'm really jacked and ripped. It's like everything is like showing you that you're not that. So you're, first off, side note, developing the muscle of self-belief, which is, belief is essentially thought that's repeated over and over and over again until the energy is non-contradictory, combined with identification with a set of circumstances being a certain way, once again, without contradiction, right? If I believe wholeheartedly, I'm thinking thoughts wholeheartedly, that I win all the time, my reality will mold to show me that I'm a winner, and then I will put myself into a reality loop where I'm thinking and feeling as if I am the thing, seeing external evidence, and then identifying with that. When you're unconscious in the beginning, right, you do this with everything, right? Oh, I always get bad traffic, right? You're thinking that thought, you're having that emotion, you're accepting that thought, mental identification paradigm. You're going into traffic and you're seeing bad traffic and you're binding to that state more because of the edification of the results of the way you're thinking and feeling and projecting that into your electromagnetic field, which magnetizes everything to you. So when you wake up, you're just essentially putting the causation of everything internal, right? You're understanding that you have an electromagnetic field that magnetizes stuff to you all day in terms of people, places, and circumstances. Why? Think about, I was thinking about this person and they called me, right? you're continually meeting up with things that are on what you could call your frequency, right? You use frequency to understand things through the lexicon of law of attraction or law of vibration, right? Frequency makes sense because of radio tuners, right? So if I tune a radio to 91.91 and that's the rock station, I'm going to hear rock music. Or I turn 92.2 and that's the jazz station, I'm going to hear jazz, right? So when you're tuning yourself, right, you hear somebody say, hey, tune up, or whatever. You're tuning that internal, what you could call a core frequency, right, to be of a I am and I have what I want thing, right? So the way that you architect that is through language and through feeling. And the way that you manipulate language is you begin to think as if you have things now. But the thing that will stop you from that is having what is called belief in second causes, meaning that well, I can't do this because of this. It's the lack of awareness that thought creates that circumstance, right? So you have to understand that the thought that you're thinking combined with the emotion that you're feeling is programming your field, which is magnetizing things to you. So once you really get that, you can start to what would be called detach from external circumstances, people, places, and events. Doesn't mean that you don't care about them. Doesn't mean that you don't see them as not real. Doesn't mean that you're not anything. It just, you understand that they're effects, right? In the same way that if I play a game of Tetris and I play this game of Tetris and I get a score that's not really the way I want it to be, and I go, oh, dude, the score sucks, man. Why is the score so low? It's like, well, because of the way you played the game, it's a reflection of how you played the game. The score in of itself is just an effect of the inputs that you put into the game. So if you want to change the score, instead of hitting the screen with a hammer and going, why won't this score change? You start up the game and you play the game to equate to the score that you want to play, right? So when you understand that internal mastery begins with thinking from as if you are who you want to be now, combined with persistence, then you start to re-engineer the way that you think, right? It's more of, I see this thing, I see this thing, I gauge it one of two ways, wanted or unwanted, fulfillment or non-fulfillment. Am I in a fulfillment or non-fulfillment reality? That's the first question you ask. Does this emotion, does this thought, does this circumstance, does this version of this person, because there's multiple versions of people, align with what I would consider a fulfillment reality? And that's for you to decide, right? No one decides that for you. You decide, hey, this either jives with my ideal reality or it does not. If it does, then you judge it as it being constant. I always have this experience. I always make money. I always am in my dream body, right? Because judgment freeze frames reality. If it's not the way that you want it to be, no big deal. Backstep. You're a thinker and a focuser, meaning that you think what you think you become and what you focus on you create. So the worst thing you can do with a non-fulfillment reality is to think as if that's your identification and to focus on it because you're going to create more of it, right? So how do you navigate something that's all over the place, right? Say you're in a horrible ghetto and you're like, I live in a mansion and it's just horrid everywhere you look, right? Well, you have to find ways of pulling your focus away from that thing, and you have to identify and persist in the reality internally of the version that you want to be. So the way that you do that is you see something that is not what you want. You don't fix it. You go, nope, that's not me. I don't identify as that. I identify with this. I'm so happy and grateful now that this is like this and that it's done now. And then you persist as the version that has it done now. Oftentimes, when you try to use a manifestational technique, you will essentially think as if you are the person who has that thing now, but then wait for the outside to change, which is the identity who's waiting. So you have to get that mental trick out of your head because that's a really big trick that can stop everything, right? When you have what you want, if I am a person who has a controller, right? I'm not going, man, I'm so happy and grateful now that this controller's here. I'm so happy and grateful now that this controller's here. Let me make sure it's still here. If I don't keep affirming, it's not going to be here. You have to just accept that it's yours, right? And what happens to contradict you accepting that something's yours is that contrasting state of what you would call a non-fulfillment reality continually trying to impose itself on you, right? That could be the same thing as you say you're rich, but then you have a bill or something come up, right? And you're like, it's all bullshit. You have to disidentify with the version of yourself that experiences that on an identity level, because everything is reflected effects, right? So you get a score in a game, it's an effect. You have a bill, it's an effect. You get paid, it's an effect, right? So you work at that root level of causation, which the only name of God is I am healthy now. Why? Because I am the source of emanation in my reality. What does that mean? Well, if you die right now, how effective is your body at operating? Well, your body would fall over and be ant food, right? So if your body is ant food without you in it, you must be pretty darn important. So if you're important, why are you important? Well, because everything is a metaphysical state and everything is quote unquote dead or dormant until you inhabit that state. I have no anger until I inhabit the state of anger, and then anger manifests through me. I am not sad until I inhabit the state of sadness, and then it's boo-hoo. So you are a source, power source, that inhabits these different states. And once you understand that, you can now design and tailor the exact states that you want through your inhabitation of them. When you are dealing with chronic unwanted states, the reason they linger is because you're halfway in, halfway out of them. That in Neville Goddard's lexicon is called binding and loosing. So if you're bound to a state, how do you get out of a state? You release it. That's what letting go means. If I'm in a Chinese finger trap, the more I fight it, the more I get in the glue trap, right? I let it go. So you master the aspect of your mind that is able to choose what they want, judge, is this a fulfillment or a non-fulfillment reality on a thought, emotion, a person, a place, a circumstance, or a version of something. And if it's not, then I'm loosing myself from that state. No, that's not me. That's what turn the other cheek means. No, that's not me. Because your focus is powerful, right? And your thinking is powerful. So when you loose from a state, you let it go, you ignore it, you don't give it more power or more energy, right? And then it starts to nip at you, but then it diminishes over time because of your lack of awareness and focus on it, right? Whilst changing your internal thought process is, I am the person who has this now done because I am the source that inhabits the state that is building manifestation, right? As you begin to master that identification aspect of your self-concept, as well as loosing yourself from unwanted states, instead of refocusing on them and taking the bait, if you will, every time they try to get you to emotionally charge them, they will lose power and the new state will become more and more inhabitable. Same thing with dominant thinking. If you have thoughts that you dominantly think all the time, those are much more accessible. And thoughts have magnetic propensity, meaning that a thought held for 17 seconds will magnetize another thought to it. So as you dwell in I am, I have, I am fulfilled, this is the way I want, you're going to bring in all of these different magnetized thoughts, emotions, and things that are complementary to what you would call a fulfillment reality, which is common in that with all other fulfillment realities, in that it has an implication that things are the way that you want them to be. That's why if you run into something, you go, nope, everything's perfect. I'm so happy that everything's perfect now. Why? It implies everything's the way you want it to be. So as you begin to gauge the quality of these states, loose yourself from the unwanted, goose up the wanted ones. The wanted ones will stick to you and become your character, meaning that, man, that guy's always got money. Man, that girl's always got money. Man, that girl's always healthy. Man, that guy's always healthy. And that's your goal, is to really design your internal environment to be bound to exclusive wanted states of your choosing, because then that allows you to use all of the color palettes in the way that you want them to be. So I know you guys enjoyed the video. If you'd like to do coaching, click the link tree for the options. If you do the Spartan 1, that's 6 calls with me as well. You have the free optimization packet that you can watch just so you can learn a little bit more about that, as well as the regular coaching as well. The most important thing that I have to say today, guys, is go conquer, and I'll see you in the next one. Cheers.